My father made it very clear that I'm not to return until I find the Avatar. Which means it could be a very long time before we return home.
Home. Everything I need is on this boat. Like I said, all the tea I need.
Come along with us on an idle ride through the latest science fiction and fantasy shows, movies, and video games. Welcome to Idle Ride. I'm Marcy, your host, here with my co-host and chosen brother, Paul.
What's up, everybody?
And we're here to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Netflix series, episode 4, Into the Dark. As Paul and I previously talked about, I have become a little bit more objective about the series. I'm not as sad as I was before.
Just got some emotional distance.
I got some emotional distance, so now I can be more positive. That's usually who I am, but this show, I had to pull back my expectations. And so now, after watching this episode again, episode 4, there's definitely a lot to like about this episode, even though I think there's plenty of flaws as well.
Flaw number 1, and maybe we should turn this into a running gag. I believe there is 0 seconds of Appa in this episode.
I thought so too, but there's like 1 second, because at the very end, Zuko sees Appa fly away.
The shadow, okay.
The shadow of Appa. But yes, that is and forever will be the biggest flaw of this show, is how little they do with Appa.
Season 2, you guys can turn this around if you make an episode only about Appa.
Well, there is an episode about Appa fully, so
the captured one,
yeah. I know, where he basically also becomes a samurai. Anyway, they're probably going to skip all of that. But the least you could do is just make him part of the team. But obviously that's not going to happen. So again, we've got so much going on in this episode that I'm going to break it down into the different characters' timelines. So we're just going to do Zuko's story, Zuko and Iroh's story, Katara and Sokka's story, and then Aang and Bumi's story.
Yep.
And I'll talk a little bit about the initial intro, and then we'll kind of skip to those timelines. But so you start out the episode with Aang just being captured by the Earth Kingdom soldiers and thrown into jail. And my, he's in jail again with Uncle Iroh.
They gotta stop meeting like this.
I know. I guess this is the only way that they could, from a story perspective, put those two together, which again, in the original animation, they don't really have a lot of scenes together.
Right.
So they start talking about Zuko basically in this scene, and Aang's being a little bratty about how Zuko is acting, and Iroh's just being pretty good at being neutral in this scene.
Yeah, I still think I really like the way they're setting up these, because I kind of like the back and forth between the two, but it definitely doesn't seem like Iroh's at his best yet, because he's like, fighting is the best thing in the world, and it makes you good, or some bullshit.
Well, and this is where my objectivity finally comes in, to where I realize now that not only, again, thank you, Cam, for equating it to a CW show, but not only is it a CW show, but it's also just a kids show. So the animation is a kids show, but it's also got a lot of depth like an adult person's show. But this is pretty low on the depth scale. So you think about how you make a TV show, you might want to make it accessible to a certain type of person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like intro to ethics, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you've got to have them have a personality that's very like for kids, that kids would gravitate towards, because they're making it a kids show. And so I just have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think there's, again, a lot of exposition in this episode that could have been shown, not talked about, but
Yes.
I think that that's, again, because it's a kid's show. So I loved the jail, though. Like, it very much felt like an Earth Kingdom jail with the glowy green rocks and, like, everything is stone.
I kept thinking those rocks were uranium. And I know that, like, emeralds are also green, but, like, the glowing, I was like, these guys must have, like, horrible cancer rates.
That's funny. I do remember going to a geological museum once, and there's a type of rock that if you do like black light on them, they'll like glow.
Oh, tons of rocks too,
if,
yeah.
If you like hit them with UV rays long enough, and then if it's dark, then they glow.
Right, like the stars that you put on your ceiling as a kid.
So it's kind of like, it makes sense that in this world there would be some rocks that have like an inner light from, maybe there's some organism in there that's like lights it up. I don't know.
Yeah, we can give them a pass on that.
Very Earth Kingdom, but yeah, I guess they're irradiating their prisoners so they don't have to stay long. They'll just die in a year.
Nobody ever comes out.
And then also, in this little intro, Sokka confronts the Mechanist about being a traitor and giving weapons/inventions to the Fire Nation. So we kind of get the return to that storyline. And the Mechanist is kind of funny, like, oh, I haven't been giving them anything that they can actually use as weapons. I'm just giving them little things here and there. I'm like, whatever.
We all call
adult.
bullshit on that.
Yeah, you know what they're doing with the inventions you create. You're an idiot.
Yeah, I liked Sokka's line where he basically just said, in the wrong hands, anything can be a weapon.
Yeah, Sokka has some great lines in this. Like, I've written them down. They're so good. Like,
nice.
The actor playing Sokka really is hitting the comedy hard in this episode in a few scenes, and I'm loving it. And then Katara runs in and she's like, I found out where Aang is. He's in prison. How did she figure that out? Like, who's her contact that knows? So this is where you and I had some issues in the previous episode where they're just like shoving these plot devices in with no like context to how they learn the things that they learn. That's the beginning. I don't know if I want to start with Zuko's story first because that's the storyline I love the most. So maybe we should finish on a good note.
Okay.
And finish with Zuko and Iroh's storyline. What do you think?
I'm very curious to hear more about why you love it the most, because while I liked it, I felt that it was completely out of place in this episode. Like, it didn't fit with the plot beats and it should have like had its own space. But yeah, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, let's keep it for last then, because that sounds like it'll be an interesting one. We can focus on Katara and Sokka's storyline then to start.
That actually feels like it fits best since Katara's just like, I know where Aang is and he's in prison. Let's do something important about that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a scene where Teo is talking to his dad and he's like, oh, there's these tunnels. Don't you remember, Dad? And the Mechanist is like, those aren't real. And then Teo's like, you literally told me they were real. And he's like, well, they're just really dangerous. And then Katara and Sokka find the tunnel. And again, Katara's like, this is the only tunnel I could find. It's like, what the fuck? Did you like spend 5 days like searching the mountain and this is the only tunnel you could find? Like,
yeah, it's not like they have Airbender like scan the entire mountain from above abilities.
Exactly. Like the previous episode where Aang scanned the whole mountain for a previous cave that wasn't this cave. So she's a fucking liar. So they do find a tunnel. Oh, and I forgot, there's a Sokka line in there when they're talking to the Mechanist where he goes, so not just tunnels, but secret haunted tunnels? Like, he's super, like, it's such a Sokka moment where he's a little bit afraid of going to the tunnels because of, you know, there might be some secret ghost in there. Even though he's the most logical of them all, he always gets the most afraid of the supernatural stuff.
Well, yeah, he has no resistance to the supernatural. He has no bending at all.
Yeah, that's true. It's important that he actually be very hyper aware of that. Oh, wait, I'm skipping some stuff.
Oh no, rewind.
Yeah, so they don't make it to the tunnel yet because Katara finds her water skin.
Yeah.
Yep. So she's in that like fountainy area close to the Mechanist's house, and she finds her infamous water skin that she uses the rest of the series. But I feel like in the original animation, that was found a lot earlier. Like she had it from the very beginning, I feel like, but I could be wrong.
It did feel very much like a Metroidvania type upgrade. You know, like you're just in a corner and you find a thing and now you have a permanent upgrade.
Yeah, that's true. It was funny because at first I thought it was in the Mechanist's shop, but then I realized she's outside.
Yeah, especially when Jet walks up to her.
Right, and he's creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
A stalker dude. Like, he just slinks up behind her and is like, "You betrayed me!"
I can show you the dark side.
Yeah, pretty much. Jet Palpatine.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what she says, but she's like, uses not a very Katari voice. It's very like soft. You're just like the firebenders. You use hatred. And I'm like, no, stomp your fucking foot. Like, be angry. Be like, you're just like them.
Yeah.
Like, you're using hatred as a means to justify the ends, you know, like, and it's just too, she's not forceful enough with her anger at like the circumstances. Like, literally, he's murdering people.
Yeah. And like, at one level, she should feel betrayed because he was wooing her and being all nice and friendly. And then, you know, oh, yeah, and yeah, of course we were going to use you to assassinate. What did you think? We're bad people.
It was just, I wanted her to be more dominating in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And she does, like, she does use the classic Katara, like, water ice move, which is really cool. Still a little slow with the bending, but I do appreciate that was a very important part of the Jet episode where she is the one that captures him with ice so that the Team Avatar can go stop the dam from breaking in that original episode. So they're using that moment from that episode, but there's a lot of less stakes in it
There's
somehow,
no stakes,
even though though it's like, you know, he's not going to kill her. And like, how did she take Jet down? I mean, come on. He let her do that, I feel like. Anyway, so that's that. She gets her water skin, and then they find the tunnel. Secret tunnel. The secret tunnel. Secret, 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 secret tunnel. I mean, again, with the side characters. Amazing. Like, just these guys look so good. I'm just sad that they brought the secret tunnel episode here. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. What do you think about it?
It was flavor added to the world and nothing else in this context. Like, it was fine, but it wasn't really driving the plot. I mean, it showed them the background story with a lot of exposition, but like, pacing was horrible.
Yes, exactly. So this is a episode from season 2 that they're pulling this from. It's called The Cave of Two Lovers, and it's a episode that is pivotal to Katara and Aang's relationship, number 1. So now they've switched out Aang for Sokka, which, not interesting. And then the reason it made so much sense to tell the story of Omashu, Oma being one person from one tribe, Shu being from another tribe, these two star-crossed lovers come together, and then having it be like Aang and Katara. And again, they've totally eliminated the Aang crush, which I guess, like, we've talked about how it kind of makes sense that they did that, because it's weird to have, like, a little boy have a crush on a, like, teenage girl, but that happens all the time. It's cute. It's cute. You could do it and make it cute.
Yeah, I had crushes on my babysitters.
Yeah. And, like, she's not that much older. She's, like, 2 years older or something. He's, like, 12 and she's 14. Like, it's not
I
that
keep
big
thinking
of
he's
an age
8.
difference. Yeah, I mean, he looks a lot younger in this live action version, but and in the cartoon. But I think it's just it was such a cute moment in Aang and Katara's relationship. And Sokka gets separated from them and he's with the fucking hippies. And like, he's the most like logical person. And he's just so annoyed by all their like woo-woo hippie stuff. It's like the perfect, funny, cute, wonderful episode about love and friendship. Like, so anyway, you meet the hippies. They were amazing. I loved them. I know why they shoehorn this episode here is because I'm pretty sure the writers were like, search for Omashu episodes in Avatar: The Last Airbender cartoon. All right, let's put these two together because they're both about Omashu. Like, no, like that doesn't have to happen.
There's
going
to be 2 episodes in season 2 because of all the borrowing.
Yes, exactly. Sokka and Katara meet the hippies and they kind of tell them this story, and then they show them the little insignia at the top of the rocks that says love is brightest in the dark, and tell them that they can make it to the castle from there. And then it's kind of one of those scenes where as Katara and Sokka walk off, they're like, but you're gonna die if you do. It was sort of like in Labyrinth when that little worm tells her to go there. You could go that way or you could go that way. And then she's like, okay, I guess I'll go this way. And he's like, but if you go that way, it leads straight to the castle. Like she totally missed the way that she could have gone that would have saved her so much heartache.
Yep.
Anyway, it's not that complicated. Sokka and Katara start arguing about the incidents that they had in the previous episode where she believed in Jet and he believed in the Mechanist. And then Katara's like, you're not my dad. And then there's a cutaway and then they come back and now they're making up. And they have like a good brother-sister moment, I guess, where they both realize that they're growing up and that these experiences are changing them. And along the way, they see these lights that they're following. So the scene in the original animation in the Cave of Two Lovers, there's a scene with Aang and Katara where they're holding a candle in between them. And like, it is seared into my brain where they're going to kiss. They're both got their little anime like blush on their cheeks and the candle's slowly like deteriorating and it goes out. And just as they're about to kiss each other, then the lights are revealed. And it was like such a perfect moment in the cartoon where you're like, then they see the lights and they're like, oh, we follow the lights. And in the episode, the animation, they actually do follow the lights. And they lead somewhere. Mm-hmm. But in this, there's nothing that has to do with the lights. It's just like they missed all of like the fun of finding the lights and that in fact they do lead somewhere. Anyway, I don't know if you remember anything about that episode, but it was seared into my brain that Aang and Katara almost kissed in that episode in a very cute way.
I kind of remember that. I more remember the badger mole discovery.
Well, yes. So then, thankfully, Netflix decided to spend the money on the animation for the CGI animation for fucking badger moles. Because finally we get the badger moles. But because you have badger moles, I guess you can't have Flopsy from Bumi, or you can't have Appa, because you can only pay for one giant CGI creature in every episode, apparently.
That must be it.
It was worth seeing the badger moles, and they kind of do a throw off of like, and the badger moles were the original earthbenders. So you get a little bit of the lore of that every nation has an animal that taught the humans how to bend. So like Fire Nation has dragons, Earthbenders have
the badger moles.
Airbenders have the sky bison, and I don't know if what are the waterbenders?
I thought you said otter benders for a second there.
I almost did. Waterbenders, maybe otterbenders taught them how to waterbend. I know that Korra rides like a polar bear dog, but he doesn't waterbend. So, let me look it up.
Okay.
Water lion turtle. Wow. So that's hardcore.
It's a triple chimera.
Yeah, and he's the one that grants Aang that special ability at the end. Remember?
Nope.
In season 3? Oh, God, Paul. Okay. That's really interesting. Anyway, so each bending group has their own animal that's kind of helped them along the way. So we meet the badgers, and then Sokka does another really funny line where he's like, so they respond to love? How do you think they do with verbal commands? Like, just really good. And then, his other funny thing was when he comes upon the hippies. The hippies are singing the Secret Tunnel song, and they like point at this shaker, and they want him to pick up the shaker.
Yeah.
So Sokka like picks up the shaker. And then at first he's like kind of annoyed about it. And then he like really starts getting into it. And that was a very like Sokka moment.
To the point where they're like, great job with that, bro.
So once again, this episode, I think, is highlighting two characters, or those two characters are maybe who are doing the best acting. I don't know, but Sokka and Zuko are really who they have been focusing on. Mm-hmm. Certainly it's not Aang and Katara, which I feel was like the focus of all of the first season was Aang and Katara, pretty much. And then, like, obviously Sokka got his moments and stuff, but there was tons of Aang and Katara, and there's, like, none in this Netflix show.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. The Badger Moles take Katara and Sokka to Aang. So let's delve into the Aang and Bumi stuff. At the beginning of that storyline, you get a flashback of Aang and Bumi together as young kids in Omashu, and Bumi gives Aang the Sky Bison whistle, mm-hmm. which is very important to Aang, but you wouldn't know that because you haven't seen Appa at all.
Yeah,
so.
Or him ever using it before this scene.
He uses it one time.
Okay.
He uses it in the very first episode. He calls Appa with it. But other than that, why is it important to Aang? We don't know, because we haven't seen freaking Appa this whole season.
I actually didn't realize it was a whistle when I was watching this, because he just, like, held it out and was like, it looks like some other animal. And, like, they could have just blown on it, and then I would have connected that.
Right! So many lost moments there. So it starts with, again, Aang and Iroh in the jail. And then this time they're talking about the Fire Nation, and Aang accuses him of not caring about anything, and then Iroh reveals a bit about his past. It's more actually about Iroh in this scene.
Yeah, specifically, Aang says, like, oh, Zuko owes you a lot, and then Iroh's like, no, actually, flip it around, I owe him everything.
Yeah, that's what he says. And so you're wondering, this is where it begins, where I become the most invested in Zuko and Iroh, which when I first was going to watch this series, I was like, oh, I don't know about Zuko and Iroh. And they really take hold of me. This is like what I hold on to for this show is this storyline. But so the guards take Iroh away. They're going to take him to some pit of despair.
When nobody returns.
Well, I'm really leaning into like the Henson labyrinth today, but I guess there's some connections.
The Sarlacc pit. Let's keep it Star Wars.
This storyline is purely from the original animation episode, The King of Omashu. So they're mixing The King of Omashu and The Cave of Two Lovers. So again, now we get all those scenes that we didn't get the previous episode of Bumi and Aang hanging out together. What is your take on Bumi? What do you think about Bumi in this?
I think that the actor does a good job of dancing between absurdist, ridiculous, comedic, like, what would you think an old man who's losing his mind is like, and then just really bleak, dark, like, I've had 100 years of Fire Nation trying to destroy this town that I'm in control of. Life sucks, it is horrible. And I like that. I think his costume is kind of bad.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm watching TNG again. Like, we still can't do better old man makeup? Like, I don't get it.
It's like he's got cotton in his forehead or something.
Yeah, like liver spots are like not all over the face like that. And the only place he has liver spots is on his face. You've got to make it on his body too. If you're going to have like liver stuff here, you got to make all kinds of weird bumps and shit, because the Bumi in the animation did have like weird stuff all over his body. Right. It was really disgusting.
We do get to see him with his shirt off, so.
Yeah, exactly. But you're right. I absolutely agree. So the actor who plays Bumi, sorry if I destroy how you pronounce your name, Utkarsh Ambudkar. So I know this actor. Andrew and I have been watching this show called Ghosts. It's the American version of Ghosts, and he is really good in it. He's like really funny. I think he's super nerdy. He must be nerdy in real life too, because he plays an amazing like nerdy D&D guy who's like a chef on this show. And you watched some of the British version,
the British one, yeah,
because of us. I really like him, and it's an interesting choice for Bumi. Like, I would have never thought of him as being Bumi, but I think, like you said, he did a really good job at walking that line of weird, off-the-handle kind of king behavior where he'll make these weird requests and tell jokes and then be really serious.
Yeah,
you know?
Let's highlight. So his opening scene, he stands up and he like shows some signs of recognition, but the first thing he does is he orders tea, and he has like a combo of 3 ingredients, and one of them's like pine resin or bark or something. And then when he gets the tea, like 30 seconds later, he's like, "What idiot put pine resin in this?"
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I mean, Bumi definitely is Bumi. Like, I think he really got the essence of Bumi. Mm-hmm. And I do love that he does a bunch of cheesy jokes, and he's got all of his like advisors, and they're all like fake laughing at his cheesy jokes.
He's holding a lettuce and says, "Let us go." Such a dad joke.
I mean, again, I want to point out that the original character from the animation had, like, again, an animal companion named Flopsy, which now he's just relegated to statues sitting around Bumi. And Flopsy was this, like, huge gorilla goat that also had bunny ears. And jumped around kind of like a bunny. But again, they, I guess, only had the money for one big CGI creature an episode, so we didn't actually get to see Flopsy as a living, breathing creature. So there is kind of a throwaway line in the table scene as well, where Aang chooses a soup that's vegetarian and says, "I'm vegetarian." So this is like the first time you've kind of seen or heard about Aang's more ascetic lifestyle is kind of like a monk who's a vegetarian and a pacifist, even though he doesn't like say it explicitly ever. At least you get a little glimpse into it here.
Yeah. So at least they incorporated it as Aang wondering if Bumi was testing him, which I think we can all agree he was testing him.
Yes.
Because it wasn't just a throwaway line of like, "Oh, and I'm a vegetarian or a vegan," or, you know, like they didn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't unnecessary dialogue added. They made it relevant.
Right. That's true. Like, it was a piece of this ongoing theme in the Aang and Bumi storyline that Bumi is testing him, trying to show him that he's going to have to make these really hard decisions.
Yes.
And so the actor who plays Aang, I'm going to try to start getting their names out there so I can start remembering them myself. Gordon Cormier, he really is just yells his lines a lot. And I love the cuteness of him, but I think he is like really trying to enunciate too hard. Like everything is like yelling, or like he's trying, every emotion is like the most emotion-y of that emotion, and he's not really very subtle about things because he's a kid. So I understand that piece of it, but
I have strong feelings, okay?
yeah, exactly. That's it. And it just didn't feel like what I want Aang to be, which is like sometimes Aang would just be very reasonable with people. That's what made him off-putting, is he would be like, "This is who I am, like I have fun, but like I understand what my duties are." And that's again what they're really missing with Aang in this Netflix series, is like that he actually is, he is on this journey, wants to be on this journey, and is like practicing waterbending, trying out the bendings, trying to figure it out. And they're only presenting him sort of as this reluctant hero, which he was never really a reluctant hero. He was just trying to figure it out, and he's a kid trying to figure it out. That was kind of more what was happening with his storyline.
Yeah, reluctant doesn't fit with Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Right. They're all very like strong characters who have a mission. Like they're all gunning for this mission, like trying to save the world. Don't tell us you're trying to save the world. Show Aang trying to save the world.
Thank you. This is something that this episode he does none of, and I hate that about it.
So there's like a lot of Bumi and Aang arguing. Bumi attacks Aang in this hallway with like rock candy. I'm not sure exactly why we needed that scene. I think we could have just switched straight to the fight, but
yeah, just show more of the fight.
Yeah, like incorporate the rock candy into the fight scene. There's so much cutting in this episode between the different storylines. Like, it took me forever to write my notes because I was like, oh, we're already to the other storyline? Like, literally, it would be like 10 seconds of one scene with these characters, 10 seconds of the next.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not that short, but it felt that short to me.
Yeah, because we already did the complaint that how many days did it take Katara and Sokka to find the tunnel, and like all the delays that happened and the debating with, tell them about your Fire Nation spy past. All of that could have taken a week. And the Aang thing is like, he's in prison for like an hour, had a convo with Iroh, went upstairs, had a little bit of soup, did a little bit of arena fight, and then that's it.
And then Katara and Sokka show up right at the right time. Surprising.
Right in time for him not to have to make a tough choice.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Okay, so let's just get straight to that fight. So this is one of the better fights of the season. Not the best fight, because I think there's a Zuko and Iroh fight that's better in this episode than any of the other fights so far in the season.
And also just the opening running away Earthbender who died in the very first episode. That was some pretty cool stuff.
That was like some cool stuff. It's on par with Zuko and Iroh, I would say. So in the fight scene with Bumi is now like really just trying to teach him a big lesson about not being passive, but really trying to stand up and make decisions.
And that you're going to lose core parts of yourself when you make these decisions. That he's Kobayashi Maruing him. He's giving him impossible choices and saying, you're going to have to sacrifice in order to succeed.
Yes. And there's a lot of good earthbending in this. I did notice that I didn't realize it, but Bumi sand bends in this episode. So the arena is filled with sand, and there's a scene where he sand bends and makes Aang fall into the sand.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this should cue everyone in that he's a true master because he has mastered multiple types of earthbending. And there's a good scene where he throws a gigantic boulder at Aang, and Aang leaps over it. But once again, they don't show his speed. They slow it down.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you like about the fight scene?
I liked that Bumi, being an older gentleman, wasn't doing a bunch of fancy jump moves and like running around. He was standing in place. He was just accessing the core of himself and just doing simple, small movements that had massive effects with earthbending, like showing that he's powerful and in control and doesn't have to be young and flashy and like a Star Wars remake Jedi who dances everywhere.
That's a really good point. And that reminds me, too, this is the scene where he rips off his shirt.
Yep.
And I did read somewhere that they had to decide, was that you telling me this?
I don't think so.
Know. Okay, so Bumi always has like huge amounts of hair everywhere. And one of the hairs is he's got giant armpit hair. And so they had to decide how long was too long of armpit hair. And in my opinion, it wasn't long enough. I'm just gotta say, like, he needs more armpit
Could
hair.
have done more, guys.
I do love that aspect of Bumi, that he's just kind of disgusting because he's like 100+ years old. And like, I gotta say, like, I've met a lot of 100+ people, and though they are lovely humans, there's lots of gross stuff that happens to your body when you get old and it starts deteriorating. And I love that they showed that about him, that even though he's buff, he's got like liver spots and he's all kind of crooked over. He's got kyphosis, you know. It's just like funny to see that he's still strong, but he's also 100 some years old.
And so in my mind, I was thinking of like ways to show a powerful earthbender with a broken body or just an aged body. And I thought it would have been kind of cool if he did like armor, like a mech of rocks around him.
Or or he just like sits on a rock stone that walks him everywhere.
Yes. You can't fall down if you don't walk.
Yeah, exactly. So in this fight, there's a point where Bumi like pulls down a huge, gigantic rock and Aang is using his hands, swirling them around to keep the rock up with air, so he's not using earthbending. And then Bumi pulls another huge rock to fall down on him, and Aang rescues him from being smashed. And so Aang is holding up 2 giant rocks, one above Bumi, one above himself, and with airbending. And Bumi is like, you have to make a decision. Like, so this is a fun and like really poignant message to be giving, that like, I don't care if I die, I need you to learn this lesson, right?
This
that
is the
friends
real
aren't gonna
challenge.
save you, you know? And then the friends save him or whatever. And I guess, like, I appreciate that there's this moment where, like, Sokka and Katara show up, and Sokka slides on water that Katara made into ice to grab Bumi out of the way, and then Aang lets that one drop and saves himself. And so there was no lesson learned in this moment, except that my friends will help me out. But based on me having already watched all of the episodes, like, okay, so there should be some kind of stakes here that he didn't really learn the original lesson. So his friends will help him out in the end, or he'll have to make a decision that the friends can't help him with. But it doesn't really end up being that way. There's no stakes at the end that are fulfilled, I guess.
It came to the edge to the point of Aang learning an important lesson and then just completely walked it back and said, nope, no consequences, no pressure.
I guess the rest of it is where, like, Aang kind of, has the throwaway line of, I did learn a lesson, like, my friends did save me, or whatever.
Also,
I keep saying throwaway lines.
All lines are throwaway in this show. I'm going to bring in some D&D here just to make a point.
Sure.
In the traditional, especially second edition D&D, the 4 elements have kind of a rock, paper, scissors to them. And air is beaten by earth. And so that's super important in a lot of, situations where you have like priests of different elements. So the idea that Aang is using air to hold up the rocks shows, yes, he's using an incredible show of force to do it. But if he had just freaking practiced waterbending, he could use water to blow that shit away, no problem.
I mean, and then they do talk about how even in Avatar Airbender world, Earth is very difficult for airbenders to learn because it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, they have a little bit of that.
Yeah, but if Bumi had just decided, Bumi let the rocks drop, but Bumi's not pushing down on the rocks.
Nope, he could have made it harder.
He could have just made him crush him,
yeah.
or crush himself. So all Aang is doing is like keeping 2 big rocks up. There's no earthbending going into like pushing down. So,
or a slight variation, Bumi could have raised the earth that they're on just to add pressure.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Well, yeah, they're struggling a little bit with these plots, trying to like shoehorn everything in when their focus should have been keeping the team together, showing us who this team is.
They're always splitting the party.
They're always splitting the party. So at the very end, Bumi has another recollection of their time together and decides to kind of just give Aang this one, like, okay, I guess you do care about being the Avatar now. And I don't understand why the adults keep blaming Aang. He was 12 years old, and his unknown power caused him to sleep for 100 years. It's not his fault. You shouldn't be blaming the kid. You should be blaming the circumstances. They
could have really done a good job of being mature about that emotional blame, where adults should be like, yeah, for my entire life I've blamed you because where the hell were you? But now that I know, I can't do that anymore.
Well, and I don't even think in the animation they ever blamed Aang for that.
No, but like,
I think
I would have if I felt like there's a Superman that could have saved us from the Fire Nation, and then Superman just went to his fortress or whatever.
Fortress of Solitude, aka an ice ball. Yeah, it's true, but he was still a kid.
Yeah.
Again, it is an interesting part of being an Avatar where like a small child also has the experiences of hundreds of thousands of adults. And so they really haven't gotten that to feel like it is in Aang. I feel like Aang always feels like a kid in this series, but that in the animation, I always felt that there were certain moments, because Aang is a monk and their philosophy is very kind of Buddhist feeling, There were moments when Aang really did feel like an adult, and he would teach lessons to the adults. Like, even in that first season, Aang is a complicated character. And he's not at all complicated in this Avatar Netflix series.
Yeah.
So Bumi and Sai meet. Sai has given Bumi knowledge of the Fire Nation spies, but the Fire Nation is coming to Omashu. They've heard that they're going to be attacked by the Fire Nation. And then there is a really good scene, a callback to the old show, where Bumi and Aang ride the rock travel system, like cart things. I don't even know what to call those. What would you call them?
I'm feeling like the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom system.
Yeah, so Aang and Bumi are riding on one of those like it's a roller coaster, and it's kind of a cute ending because that's the ending of the King of Omashu episode from the animation, where they're like both riding it and having fun like they were kids again. So I'll take it. That was fun.
Okay, two things. First is that, as cute as that was, the fact that they crushed the cabbage merchant's stuff again is like, Booby, you're being a bad king.
Yeah, there's a really cute, like, my cabbages at the end of that when they crash their little cart.
Like, you better pay that guy. And second, Boomy had just before that said, like, oh, yeah, okay, we'll go back into war footing. Like, we'll actually fight in this war again. And part of stupid, naive me was like, oh, is Aang going to actually do some good here before he goes? Because he hasn't done anything good at all.
Sorry, nope, you don't get that, Paul.
Nope.
So that's the official end of the episode for Aang, Katara, and Sokka.
For that arc. Yep.
So let's get to my favorite one, which is the Zuko stuff. So Zuko is looking for Iroh, and he's broken into the jail in an Earth Kingdom uniform.
If anyone's not fresh, like, the reason why Iroh's in prison and Zuko's looking for him is because Iroh threw himself under the bus to protect Zuko when Zuko was fighting Aang in the merchant district.
That's right. And so Zuko breaks in, he's disguised, and the actor playing Zuko, Dallas Liu, does such an amazing job. When a guard comes up to him, he turns around and he does this like really nerdy kind of like voice to pretend to be like a newbie guard who doesn't know anything. And I was like, that's spot on. Like, that is amazing.
That is a good point.
It's like a part of Zuko that I don't think we really saw much in the animation, but he really like let it fly in this scene, and it was beautiful. Like, I loved seeing like Zuko kind of playing this silly role of an Earth Kingdom guard.
Yeah, you're right. It shows a lot of flexibility because he's not just some entitled prince who always has to have it his way. He knows, oh, this circumstance, I need to be like subservient as fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he understands hierarchy. He really does. He got burned.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was like a really fun little moment that I held on to. And then the guard gives him information about where Iroh is, and then also about Aang. And so you see him having to have that conflict of, do I save Iroh or do I go after the Avatar?
Get my ambition, my goal.
And of course, we know who he chooses. Daddy, Uncle Iroh.
Uncle Daddy.
So he makes the choice. You don't see him make the choice, but we know in our hearts. And then the next scene that involves Zuko and Iroh is Iroh being taken to the pit in a caravan of guards. And this is a guard who's obviously doesn't like Iroh. He's threatening him. He punches him, calls him all kinds of bad names.
Offers him water, pours it out. Offers him an apple, eats it, throws it away.
Yeah, there's like a couple of scenes where before they get into their real fight, the jailer and Iroh, where Iroh uses his little pie show lotus tile to like give a clue, some breadcrumbs to Zuko so that Zuko can find him. And we get some clues again into Iroh's past through this jailer, where he calls him the Dragon of the West, and then he calls him the Butcher. And I like that the original Iroh and even this Iroh, he is a dichotomous character. He was a bad guy. He did butcher his own troops and the troops of the Earth Kingdom. So he was like General Grant in the Civil War, where Lee was like kind of a guerrilla warfare guy and nobody was beating him. He was on track to win the Civil War. And then Grant came in and he's like, all right, let's just keep throwing troops at him. And that's kind of how he won the war, by just butchering so many Union's troops.
It's definitely more complicated than that. Lee was actually fairly bad as a general and not doing a good job. And the lost cause myth is largely Lee trying to protect his own ego. But continue.
Okay, well, Paul apparently knows more about the Civil War than me. Okay, but
Nope. I listened to a Behind the Bat Bastards about Lee, and it was kind of incredible.
yeah, I mean, the Civil War is kind of a crazy, interesting part of the American history. And if you want to read a fictionalized but incredibly accurate version of the Civil War that is, I mean, I guess you could kind of parallel it to this since we're talking about it right now, the Fire Nation fight. It's called Killer Angels, and it's like one of the best books ever. And it's basically about Gettysburg. The first book is kind of clearly about Gettysburg, and there was very specific moments in Gettysburg that were the turning point, that made it the turning point of the Civil War, which was like, there's a moment on this hilltop, the Southern Army could not take the hill, which was really important. And then the cavalry of the Union Army actually had multi-shot rifles that really no one else had. And so it was like they were able to hold a certain area for a really long time because they basically could shoot 1,000 times with their rifles compared to the single shot blunderbusses, whatever they're called. I don't remember.
I love that, and I'm going to keep that as a mental image now.
Blunderbuss?
Yar, blunderbuss for the South.
Obviously, I haven't read this or watched this in a long time. There's a movie, the Gettysburg, the movie is based off of Killer Angels, the book. But anyway, I haven't seen it in a long time. But in high school, I took the Civil War class and then I read all this shit because I was really into it. Back to the show that we're watching now. So he's the butcher because like he was the general, like he was taking out Earth Kingdom areas, but he got to Ba Sing Se, which is the biggest city of the Earth Kingdom where the Earth King lives. And he couldn't break down the walls there. So he was just tossing men after man there. So I like that he's a character that is not cut and dry, that he has done really bad things, and it took a personal loss of his own for him to understand how wrong this war was. And that's sometimes what it does take, people having a personal experience with something before they suddenly understand, oh, maybe I don't want to be a killer or a general or any of these things, you know?
Yep.
So anyway, him and the jailer are taunting each other kind of, and then you do see General Iroh come out for a minute. His stone face reveals itself when this guy is really pushing his buttons. You see him kind of look sad after the jailer walks away.
When no one was looking at him, yeah. Did you, with the jailer guy, so every time I saw him, and it was probably largely because of his attitude, I kept thinking it was Adam Driver as Kylo Ren, just like temper tantruming and yelling. And
No, I didn't
You
see
didn't
it
see
at all,
that?
but that's like another good Star Wars reference, like that he was kind of a petulant, evil person. And I think it is interesting always. Someone like General Iroh obviously has a lot of honor, and he's like, you should think about how this war has affected you, or people have to think about that. And then they're like, yeah, are you sorry for what you did? And he's like, I wasn't talking about me, I was talking about you. And I'm like, yeah, but this jailer
Yeah.
beating you up because he's mad about his brother dying isn't as bad as you murdering like hundreds of thousands of people. But anyway.
Yeah, it's petty, but yeah, you can sort of
Yeah.
understand it.
So then we get a scene that we did not get in the animation. This is the kind of stuff that I wanted to see with this show, which is a moment where Iroh is at the funeral for his son.
So we're talking flashback.
Fire Lord Ozai comes up to Iroh as he's sitting kind of dour. He's sad because his son Liu Ten has died in the war. Actually, General Iroh has sent him to his death, quote unquote, because he dies at that battle at Ba Sing Se. And, you know, Fire Lord Ozai
Dies
is
a hero.
if you watch the animation, there are some hints in that he didn't actually die, like, because of that battle. I don't know if you remember that, Paul, but because there were
I don't.
some machinations going on with Ozai to maybe kill his son. And then he knew Iroh loved his son so much that he would give up his role as the heir to the throne, which is what Iroh did. So then they start playing the most tearful, I mean, every time I hear this song, I start crying, Leaves of the Vine. And this is how they get me. Because I mean, I was weeping watching this scene, and nostalgia really does pull you into scenes, I think, a little more if you've watched the animation. Like, the music is really what does it. You've gone through these journeys with these people, and then they have Iroh's sadness and longing for his son is this song. What do you think about the song? Did you recognize it?
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, this is the song that he sang in the cartoon in the mini episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I did not catch that. I was expecting it and I didn't. Maybe I hadn't heard it recently enough.
That song comes from an episode called Tales of Ba Sing Se, where you get little cuts of all the characters doing things, and Zuko and Iroh have kind of created a life in Ba Sing Se, and Iroh goes on this little journey of his own in that episode where he's helping out little kids, like he's doing little acts of kindness throughout the day, and then as the sun starts setting, you see him at the bottom of this tree, and he's paying homage to his son and singing this song.
I'm tingling again.
It's the Leaves of the Vine, and it's just like, I could start crying right now if I thought about it hard enough. Like, it's not even that long of a portion of the episode. It's probably like 3 or 4 minutes that you watch this journey of Iroh's, and you only hear occasionally about Luten. And that's what makes it so poignant, is like, you never meet Luten, you only hear about him occasionally, but it was a huge moment for Iroh. And that's when he changed his heart, basically, and realized that war wasn't the way, you know? So anyway, back to the flashback. Zuko comes up to Iroh as a young boy before he gets branded by his father and gives the typical, I'm sorry that he died, he was a hero, blah, 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 and he moves to go away, and then he comes back and he shows Iroh this token that Luten had given him, and actually gave a personal story about Luten and how much he would actually personally miss him. And he sits next to Iroh and grieves with Iroh. Not a single other family member stays with Iroh to grieve with him except for Zuko.
Yeah, and it took Zuko a second, because the first thing he did was following the family before him. He was just like, it was great that your son died for honor, or some bullshit like that. And he stepped away, and then he was like, I can't leave it at that. And he turned around, and that's when he showed his humility and his humanity.
And it was like a perfect little moment. I definitely cried real tears during that flashback moment. After the flashback happens, Zuko attacks the caravan, and this is like one of the best fights of the season so far, with Iroh and Zuko fighting the Earth Kingdom guards. We've got a chain fire whip. We've got Zuko's classic swirly leg fire whip move.
Jump, sweep, whip.
And then when Iroh, they don't show him using his mouth to breathe fire. Spoiler, that's why he's called the Dragon of the West. But he shoots fire from his hands like a huge jet of flames at the Earth Kingdom warriors. And you do hear a roar sound like a dragon when he does it underneath all of the fire noise. So they're kind of cueing you into this, why he's called the Dragon of the West by the Fire Nation.
It's not just a title.
I know it's stupid, but I kind of really love Zuko's floppy ponytail in this moment, because it just makes him seem more like teenagery, emo-y. His ponytail's like flowing around him as he's like doing his kicks and punches and things. It just makes him feel more teenagery.
I love it. Before we get too far, I wanted to say a quick thing about the flashback. So first, I expected that flashback the moment that Iroh, at the very beginning in the jail, was like, I owe him everything. I was like, oh God, they're going to do a flashback right now. And they didn't. And I felt pretty good that they didn't just go into a flashback. But like, I felt it pending the whole episode. So when it finally happened, I felt a lot of what you feel. But I also was a bit annoyed because this is important stuff about Zuko and Iroh that you shouldn't know for a while yet. Like, we're still supposed to see them as like the bad guys. Like, it's a payoff that we're getting way too soon, I think.
Oh, I 100% agree that all this is way too fast. We should not like Zuko and Iroh as much as we do yet. I mean, it's literally episode 4. Like, we should not like them because they're attacking. I mean, yes, there are some likable moments, but Zuko is kind of a little asshole this whole season because he's the not protagonist. So yeah, I'm already saying protagonist because he's the antagonist.
Yep.
Of the first season, and whoever made the series just decided kind of, I feel like, that Zuko and Iroh are the main characters, along with Sokka kind of being the leader of Team Avatar, and it's leaving out a lot of the subtleties of the characters, and we shouldn't like Zuko yet. That's all I have to say. And so you're right about that.
Yeah. So this is a bad fan fiction. And we're going to see Sokka and Zuko as a ship. They're going to be shipped together by the end of the
Sokka
next
or
season.
Zuko or Katara and Zuko. I'm wondering if they're going to push that instead of Aang and Katara.
That's a prediction. We'll see it in the future, maybe.
An earthbender shoots some like earth arrows at Iroh, and Zuko pushes him out of the way, but he does get hit with one of the pieces of stone.
Yeah, I think that was Kylo Ren that did that.
Oh, yeah. Jailer number 1.
Yes. And he's like, go ahead, kill me.
Oh. So Iroh's hurt and Zuko's like helping him along, and they are trying to escape the guards, and they find this like canoe or something in the woods, and Iroh says, we do spend a lot of time getting on and off boats. And when he says that line, I was like, well, that's such a weird thing to say. But then they, of course, do a flashback again with the leaves of the vine in the background. So I am like weeping in this flashback. It's a scene where Zuko is standing and he's got this huge bandage on his face and he's looking off into the distance, and you see Uncle Iroh like walk up with his like bag, and he's like being Uncle Iroh, trying to be kind of funny and lighten the mood. And Zuko's like, you don't have to come with me. You realize I'm searching for the Avatar and we could be out here a long time. And like he says, everything I need is on this boat.
Yep. That was such a good delivery, too.
And I'm like, oh, God, crying. And then he softens it with like, because I have my tea leaves in my bag or something. But we all know who you meant. Zuko, your new boy, your new son. And like, oh my gosh. So I was definitely like crying again in that episode, in that scene. And so then they flash back to present time. Oh, okay. So he was talking about the boats that they keep getting on and off in their life together. And Zuko looks up and he sees the shadow of Appa flying away and decides not to follow the Avatar again and take Iroh back to the boat to heal.
So a little bit of growth there.
I really think there's some good moments in the episode, but they're really struggling with pacing, and they're doing the classic wrong thing, which is like keeping all the main characters apart, splitting the party, as you said. So anything extra you want to say about the Zuko and Iroh?
So when they broke away from their jailers, like Iroh went out of his way to be non-lethal. And so I guess we can assume that neither of them did. And I was kind of thinking at that moment, it'd be neat to watch an offshoot of this story where it's a non-violent firebender, because firebending is like the easiest to turn lethal and permanently damaging. Someone with Aang's attitude, but fire is their primary ability, would be pretty sweet.
That would be cool. I like that idea. Or just like a pacifist that's a firebender. Like,
exactly. How
do they use their bending to fight but not burn people?
Yeah.
That aren't benders. Interesting. I like that, Paul. Well, my final impressions of this, I kind of already talked about a little bit, which is I feel like they've just full bore went, this is a kid's show. Not a lot of depth, except in those moments with Iroh and Zuko, where you could feel some emotional depth between those two characters. Everything's pretty surface level, pretty like, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm this, I'm that, without it being like much behind it. I'm really struggling with how much they are cutting in this episode specifically. Like,
oh my God, so much cutting.
So much cutting, like, and I feel like it's a disservice to each of the characters that they're going in between so many different episodes and bringing it all here. Like, pick a storyline here, like in this episode at least. Pick something you want to focus on. If you want to focus on Zuko and Iroh, focus on them, you know, like, and then do like a funny storyline or something. And then the next episode, focus on Team Avatar. But they really are just trying to shoehorn so much into this episode. And again, a lot of pulls from the second season.
It's almost like they have a buffet table with all these delightful treats. They got Earth Kingdom here and firebending drama there, and like Team Aang, you know, Aang and Appa, and like they're just taking little bits and filling their plate with meals that don't go together very well.
It's almost like the writers didn't understand like how to build the team well, because Zuko has to earn to be in the team. And if we like Zuko more than we like Team Avatar, then who are we rooting for? Are we rooting for the Fire Nation now? Like,
are we the baddies?
Are we the bad guys? Like,
And it also isn't helping that they're stealing from season 2. Like, you need to get to season 2 by doing the building of the group and the process. You can't just enjoy all the spoils of it.
Because honestly, like, Andrew and I talk about this all the time. We really like the first part of a series. So like the first movie, for example, like Spider-Man. When you learn your power, when you learn how to be that thing, when you're conflicted, that's all kind of the most interesting part of most journeys, is that like, oh, I've discovered something new about myself. And you need to have that first part of learning how these people become who they are, so that when you go to the next movie or season, all the excitement of the action and the drama and the intrigue, you actually buy into it and want to see that because you know who these people are now, right? You've seen them grow together, and it doesn't have to be all about the drama in this season. It could have been about their friendships building with a little bit of drama put in there, you know? So they're really struggling with tone, I guess. And, you know, who is your main characters? You definitely did not choose the right one to be your main character this season.
Not at all.
And Zuko is the main character, by the way, if you haven't figured that out. And like we said, no Appa. Only one big CGI character an episode. That's all you get.
Yep.
Doesn't even have to be big. If Momo's in it, Appa's not going to really be in it.
Honestly.
I liked enough about it. Especially, I do love the Zuko and Iroh stuff. And so I'm just going to enjoy that. I love that, as opposed to, you know, being upset that they're not doing more with the other characters, because I'm not going to get it. So I'll enjoy what I can about what is good in these episodes.
Kind of taking an Iroh approach of enjoying the moment to moment.
Yeah, exactly. How about you? What did you like most about this episode?
I guess I liked what Bumi was trying to do the most, and that's perhaps why I was the most frustrated, because there's almost none of him in the episode.
It's true. I could tell by your enthusiasm that you really liked Bumi, so. All right, so we'll be back next time for episode 5, Spirited Away. And the 3-body problem on Netflix is going to be after Fallout.
That's the plan.
Look forward to our new content, but if you'd like to rate and review us on where you listen to your podcasts, please do, so that we can get more listeners. And also you can follow us at Idle Ride Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. And I do have a TikTok, which is at Idle Ride, but I haven't really posted much. Eventually I'll get there, but it's a lot to do. Edit, do the podcast, do the social meds, so I'll do my best.
It's not even our job either.
It isn't. But I have fun doing it, and I get to talk to
that's
Paul,
what's important.
And that's the most important part of it. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.